Welcome back to the David Pakman Show. Joining me is Josh Idelson, contributing writer covering labor for Salon and for These Times. Also, Josh Idelson on Twitter. The article I was reading, Josh, is great, and it talks about this question of whether you can be fired for what you post on Facebook. And it seems that the answer is, while there may be one legal answer, it seems to be kind of dependent on where you work and who your employer is, does it not?
Yes, it does. Thanks for having me back, David. And the short answer is it's complicated. In general, the first point I make in the Slate article, which most people don't realize, is all things being equal, the presumption is your boss can do whatever they want in terms of what they punish you for or how they punish you. We live in an at-will employment country, and so unless you're in a state that has more protections or you're covered by a union contract or you're a government employee, presumptively, your boss can fire you for almost anything, with a couple exceptions. That's why a group of workers at 3 different workplaces have filed what will be precedent-setting cases that will be heard by the labor board, which will decide how wide one of those exceptions is. So all things being equal, take the example of a worker who was fired for having a John Kerry bumper sticker on their car in 2004. That's legal. The exception, as you were alluding to, is concerted activity. Under the Labor Relations Act from the 1930s, companies can't punish you for protected concerted activity, meaning workers banding together and doing something together to improve their working conditions. Now, people associate that with going on strike or wearing a union button, but you don't have to be in a union or trying to get a union to be doing concerted activity. Instead, there's a series of tests the labor board and the courts have come up with, all of which are somewhat subjective to very subjective. And what we're going to find out from the National Labor Relations Board over the coming months is how they're going to apply those tests to Facebook, where a lot of conversations between workers are happening now that used to happen at a water cooler or at a bar.
So let's knock out a few of the obvious things that will probably come up for a lot of people. Number one, whenever you hear something like this, you hear people talk about the First Amendment. But the First Amendment doesn't apply here because that's really about the government's right to abridge free speech. It doesn't. Is it at all relevant to this discussion?
Exactly. Like you say, it's relevant culturally. It's relevant in terms of what our values are, that we're in a country where we think people should have the right to speak freely, and especially when you're not even at work. That whatever kinds of impositions you have to put up with 8 hours a day at work, we imagine that once you go home, you can say and do what you want, but you can't. The First Amendment doesn't protect you from the government. It protects you from the government, but it doesn't protect you from the mini-government of your employer cracking down on your right to speak freely, even if the speech happens outside of work.
The other thought I'm having is, of course, with Citizens United, we now know that corporations are people, man, and that, of course, money is speech. So could a private employer legally fire you simply for finding out from, fundraise.org about your political donations?
Yes, they could.
That would be legal.
Absolutely. The only exceptions are in the Civil Rights Act or related laws, or the labor relations protection for concerted activity. But firing you for, unless it's, say, your religion or you have greater protections under state law, generally you can be fired for whatever kind of activity you're doing outside of the workplace. And people are. There are examples where people get fired because they had a threesome outside of work, or they drink alcohol outside of work, or they're involved in a political organization that the company doesn't like. And it was interesting to me when I interviewed the labor policy director at the Chamber of Commerce about this, and I asked, well, why should companies have this power? He defended it, and he said, well, management needs to be able to make sure that the right person is in the right job, and that includes temperament. And the example he gave is, oh, well, a racist. What if someone's doing racist things outside of work? Should the company really have to protect them, have to continue to pay them at work? And so business groups in the United States, conservatives in the United States, some others, like the idea that the company has absolute discretion to choose who should or shouldn't be in the workplace, even based on things that people do outside of work.
All right, so then let's talk specifically about Facebook a little bit. I mean, the logistics of Facebook are that depending on what your profile settings are, right, people you are not friends with may not be able to see what you have posted. Therefore, the question becomes, if the company receives word of what an employee has posted to Facebook third hand, in other words, from a third party who is friends with the employee but can't independently verify it, what's the situation there, right? I mean, screenshots can be doctored. Third-party reports are notoriously unreliable. What happens there?
So there is no requirement of due process in most workplaces in the US. The company can fire you over a rumor, and that includes a rumor about something you posted on Facebook, whether they've seen it or not. I mean, workers have been fired in the past over things they wrote in private letters. There's no requirement that the company have proof for why they're firing you. The only restrictions on the law are the couple reasons why companies can't fire you. And one of those is what's called protected concerted activity. That's what's protected by the Labor Relations Act. And we're going to see over the next few months how the Labor Board decides it applies to Facebook, to social media.
All right, excellent stuff. We've been speaking with Josh Idelson, contributing writer covering labor for Salon and for In These Times. You can follow him on Twitter at Josh Idelson. That's Eidelson. Great stuff, Josh. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, David.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll be back with plenty more after this.